Hi guys, it's Steffi from the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with another Books Beside My Bed video. For those of you who are new to my channel, every week I film one of these and it is a wrap up of what I've read in the last 7 days. This is my reading wrap up from the 30th of September until the 6th of October. I read 9 books this week and a total of 2,822 pages, give or take, because one was an abridged audiobook and I couldn't work out the page count, so that's not included in the total. And my yearly reading total is up to 206 books. So in an effort to keep this from being as super long as it was last week, I'm going to jump straight into it. The first book that I read this week was Escaping from Houdini by Carrie Maniscalco. This is the third book in the Stalking Jack the Ripper series. It was published in 2018 by Little Brown and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I have to say this was not my favourite of the 3 books that have been out so far. I did really enjoy it, but I don't think I enjoyed it quite as much as the others. And I have a feeling that it's because it's just a little bit longer and I think it could have been condensed slightly so that the pacing of it was a little bit quicker. In this third story, Audrey Rose and Thomas Creswell are travelling to America via cruise ship, and while they're on this cruise ship there is a circus/carnival performing on there. And on the very first night of the performance there is a very gruesome death right in the middle of the room and nobody quite knows who to trust and who is responsible, and Audrey Rose, Thomas Creswell and Audrey Rose's uncle set about the task of trying to uncover who exactly the murderer is, while Audrey Rose also becomes entangled in sort of the mystique of the carnival that is aboard the ship. This book had all the hallmarks of the former books in that it has really funny banter between Audrey and Thomas and their sort of relationship that pushes the bounds of propriety in this day and age. This is sort of historical fiction-ish. It added in the element of a love triangle, which I'm not necessarily fond of, but I also didn't necessarily mind it in this book, but it was interesting to see how it changed the dynamics of Audrey and Thomas's relationship. And we also got to see some other familiar characters from earlier books pop up in this as well. Then I read And the Ocean Was Our Sky by Patrick Ness and illustrated by Ravina Kai. This is a 2018 release from Walker Books and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It is a Moby Dick retelling from the perspective of the whales. I have to go in fully admitting that I've never read Moby Dick, so I don't actually know the story, so I don't know whether that's influenced how much I enjoyed the book, but this is a very weird story, as you can imagine, with a story told from the whale's perspective. I really liked it. There are a lot of elements in it that I found really interesting and I loved the illustrations. The artwork is just gorgeous. So the story is told from Bathsheba's perspective and she is a soldier whale in a pod of whales that go hunting human ships, and they are trying to track down a man that they consider basically a demon who hunts down whales for sport and not for any other reason. Along the way they kidnap a human and interrogate him, and it's all about this quest to find this one particular demon who haunts the whales of the ocean. And I enjoyed it, but it's just a bit weird. Then for my 200th book this year, I read Circus Hearts All Fall Down by Ellie Marney. This is the second book in the Circus Hearts trilogy and it was published on the 1st of October this year by Bearded Lady Press and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I loved this. I really loved the first book, but I love this one more. I think it's because I connected with the characters a lot more. This time the story is told from the perspective of Fleur, who is the ringmaster's daughter. She sort of had a very complicated role in the first book in that she was a bit of an antagonist for Saoirse, and in this book we suddenly see the impact that that has had on her standing within the circus, and she is now spending a lot more time helping her father run the carnival rather than just doing her trapeze performances every night. And the carnival has sort of been plagued by very mysterious but potentially deadly accidents, and when her father is injured in one of them she has to step up and take over most of his duties because he's in hospital, and she's very quickly overwhelmed because there's a lot of things to do and she's only 18. Enter Marco, who is the son of another carnival member, and he grew up with Fleur and they were really good friends until one day when he decided to leave and live with his father. They didn't see each other again or really have any contact, but he works for an event management group and Eugenia asks him to come in and help Fleur out. The two have to sort of learn how to work together again, which was really cool because it was sort of a friends to lovers trope, but it was also sort of, well, I don't want to say enemies because they weren't enemies, but when he comes back in, Fleur is quite combative with him because he left, and so she feels very betrayed by it. So it's that sort of really complicated relationship, and they were just adorable together. And Fleur was a much stronger character than I think the first book would have led us to believe, and Marco was just absolutely precious. I would take more Marco stories any day, hands down, because he was just wonderful. I really recommend this series, and I absolutely loved this book. Then I read Star Wars Phasma by Delilah S. Dawson. This was published in 2017 by Century, and I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. This was not my favourite of the Star Wars books, I have to admit, and I don't know whether it's because I'm not particularly interested in Phasma as a character, or if it was because of the way the story was told. So we are essentially getting the origin story of Captain Phasma from the new Star Wars trilogy, as told from the perspective of a rebel spy who has been captured by an Imperial agent who is trying to uncover any wrongdoings that Phasma might have perpetuated. So none of this is told from Phasma's perspective right until the very last few pages. So it's all secondhand stories. And it was interesting. There were parts of it that I thought were really, really clever, but at the same time, I don't know, it just didn't sit as well with me as some of the other Star Wars books I've read recently. Then I read Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhouse, which was published this year in 2018 by Saga Press, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. This is a sci-fi dystopian magical realism type thing that follows the story of Maggie, who is Native American, and the world that she lives in has been decimated by a disaster. The reservation land where she lives was saved from this disaster because of a wall that had been built up around the community before the disaster struck. And the idea is that the floods have come and all of the outside world has either been decimated or washed away or something like that. We don't actually know because we don't leave the walled city that she works within in this particular story. Depending on the clan that you come from, you may possess clan powers or abilities, and Maggie has 2, which makes her a very supernaturally gifted hunter, and she hunts monsters within this world. When she hunts down a monster that has kidnapped and killed a very young girl, she finds herself sort of caught up in something that's happening that she doesn't think is her business, but she can't help but try and solve it. And so she teams up with the son of an ally of hers, Kai, and the two of them try and solve this mystery of who is behind all of these really violent attacks. And that's one thing you have to keep in mind. There is a lot of blood, gore, and fighting going on in this book. There are trickster gods, there is magic, there is the dystopian aspect, and I really, really enjoyed this book. I liked the atmosphere. I liked Maggie as a character. I think she is damaged and broken, but she's also very, very strong, and in this book she does find a way to believe in her own self, which I think is really important, and her relationship with Kai is really complex and intriguing as well. Then I read Wicked Nights by Gena Showalter, which was published in 2012 by Mira, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. And this was an angel paranormal romance thing, and honestly, it was not my favorite at all. I just felt like reading something that was angel paranormal related, and that happened to be one that someone had recommended, and it just fell a little bit flat, unfortunately. It follows Zacharyl, who is an angel who has a tendency to not care so much if he kills humans as collateral when hunting demons on Earth, and so he is not in good standing with his superiors. When he is sent to manage a horde of demons that seem to be surrounding a building in the human world, he meets Annabelle, who has been inside this building, which happens to be a mental institution. The demons are quite focused on her as she's been marked as the property of a very powerful demon. He decides that he's going to try and protect her, which is a very strange thing for him to do because he really doesn't have much to do with humans at all, and you know, it all sort of spirals from there and goes back into the paranormal romance aspect, which it was fine. There was fighting, there was angels, there was demons. I'm happy. I just wish it would have been more. Then I read Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor. This is the second book in the Strange the Dreamer duology. I think it's a duology. I mean, I wouldn't complain if there's more books, but if it's just 2, then I'm completely happy. This was published in 2018 by Hodder and Stratton, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I adored this book. I adore Laini Taylor's writing. That is no surprise. I've said that many, many times. This book is quite large, but I read it in a day and I couldn't put it down. It was really, really nice to revisit the story of Laszlo Strange and Sarai and all of the other characters who live in this world. And it's really hard to talk about the plot of this one because it's spoilers for the first book, but after the events at the end of Strange the Dreamer, we pick up pretty much straight away as Laszlo and Sarai learn who they are now, because they're not who they were at the beginning of the first book. And the really lovely thing that we get in this particular story is multiple perspective storylines over multiple timelines happening simultaneously to tell the story of how everything got to be the way that it is. And there are big cinematic sort of action sequences in this book. There are a lot of things that will break your heart, and there are a lot of things that will make you reconsider your position on a few of the characters in the story, which I thought was really, really well done. I really, really loved it. Really don't want to say more than that because that would be spoilers. And even though I really want to talk about it, I don't think that I can in this particular video. Then I read Exit Strategy by Martha Wells. This is the fourth and final book in the Murderbot Diaries novella series, published in 2018 by Tor, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. This is where everything comes to a head as Murderbot tries to team up again with Dr. Mensah and provide her with all of the information that it has recorded about the Corporation Grey Chris, which was the main antagonist has been the main antagonist through the whole series, but was specifically responsible for the events that transpired in the first book, All Systems Red. Of course, being Murderbot, it quickly finds itself caught up in a lot of human drama in that it now has to save Dr. Mensah from Grey Chris again, but this time it is on a corporate world. There are a lot of things going on. Lots of fight sequences, lots of action, lots of snarky conversation and banter from Murderbot, because that's what we are here for, because Murderbot is awesome. I cannot recommend this series enough. If you are a fan of sci-fi, or even if you just want to start out, definitely try All Systems Red because it's short, it's a novella, and the series itself is pretty cool. The last book that I read or listened to was an abridged version of Rogue Squadron by Michael A. Stackpole, which is the first book in the Rogue Squadron series, part of the Star Wars universe, and I just found it on Scribd or Scribed or however you pronounce it. I don't know which one it is. I just thought I'd listen to it, and I was disappointed that it wasn't an abridged version because I wanted to get back into reading the other books in the series, but I think I will just have to read them because I want to read the whole thing and make sure I don't miss out on anything that would probably be cut out of the abridged versions. But it was good just to have something on in the background while I was doing things, so I appreciated that. So those are most of the books that I read this week. In the comments below, let me know what you have been reading in the last week. Have you read any of these books, or are you planning on reading any of them? I'd love to know. I hope that wherever you're in the world, you're having a wonderful day, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye guys.